So, Gracie, you're probably familiar with this.
Right?
It's the Mount Shasta restaurant. That's the scene where Duke Ellington's playing and Voelker, Beagler pulls Laura Mannion away, and Gracie was one of the dancers
That's right.
there. And I understand most of them were Northern Michigan University
Right,
students.
they picked up a bunch of kids from the university and brought them up here.
And somebody else was, who was it who was telling me the story about, yes? Go ahead.
Gracie, you knew Art Dahlstrom, my best friend. He was also one of the dancers in the movie.
Who, honey?
Art Dahlstrom.
Oh, okay.
And the English teacher from the high school, Shirley Smith, is still alive. She was a waitress.
Really?
And she wore the biggest earrings she had so she could tip herself over the crowd and visit.
Wow, that's fascinating. That, I did not know that. Okay, now why am I showing you this besides Voelker's painting in the courtroom? You see the men's room door there?
Yeah.
In the movie, that was the door to the law library.
Yes.
But the law library was too confined to film there, so they actually filmed at the Carnegie Library in Ishpeming, the library scene. What they did is they basically replaced the men's room sign with the law library sign. Filmed it there.
Nice
Okay.
shirt.
Yeah, I have, we have the shirt here. The people at Globe Publishing were very generous in letting me go down and take photographs of the autograph wall. Is everyone familiar with the autograph wall? You know what that is? The cast would go downstairs there and hang out in the evening. It must have been fascinating, you know, Duke Ellington playing the piano, Orson Bean doing impromptu plays, you know, just fascinating things. And Eve Arden had the idea that they should all sign the wall. So everybody signed the wall, including some people all the principals, but, you know, like the pilot signed the wall with an American Airlines logo. And there's one that says Frankie, pay me or something. Go ahead, tell
No, I'm just gonna say, they wouldn't get their last paycheck until they signed the wall.
That's right.
Wouldn't repeat the money.
That's right. So then afterwards, they painted over the signatures and put a protection over it. And the wall is downstairs now at Globe Publishing. It's no longer the Roosevelt hangout, or what Voelker referred to as Ishpeming's Club 21. And it's yellowed with age, but it's a fascinating and important, I think, historical artifact. So, Voelker passed away in 1991. He returned to Ishpeming. He lived in Ishpeming his whole life. He could have lived anywhere he wanted to. He had the fame and he had the resources to do it. But he returned to Ishpeming. He often said that, you know, if I could live anywhere in the world, I'd live in Ishpeming. This is where I want to die. He lives in the house that Anatomy built, and with a full-size office and a closet big enough for all of his fishing gear. And he had Uncle Tom's, which is a cabin that was sort of his, what do you call it? You don't call it a cottage here, you call it a camp, that's right. So that was his camp on Freshman's Pond, and Woody was kind enough to take me out there, and I have photographs of the cabin and the interior and the pond that I've included in the book here. And that's, it is a great picture, right? Voelker had a wide range of friends. You recognize who this is? Charles Corral. If I asked my law school class, no one would know it because it's the wrong generation. But Charles Corral famously said that John Voelker is the closest thing to a great man he's ever met. Look, here I am out in front of the cabin. Come on. He had 2 fish cars over the years. That's his first one. Buckshot. Here he is later in life, out at the cabin. And I wanted to conclude here where you see him truly in his element. So, it was a real privilege for me to have the opportunity to work on this project. It took several years. It got slowed down because of COVID.
Did you stay here for a long time?
I would stay here for about 4 straight years. I would come up for a week, and I would interview people. I would travel, but I would spend most of my time here in the archives. And I'd like to read one passage from the book, but it's not mine. It's what John Voelker wrote in a journal entry, which when I read this, and picture me working on this project, reading his journal entries, and then I read this. Just listen to this. Every man, every person leaves the seeds of an absorbing biography, things that would attract no notice whatsoever if the subject remained obscure, take on a vast significance if he achieves some sort of special fame. Scholars will dig and vie to find them. This is my journal. Many obscure souls write journals or whatnot. When they die, it is ordinarily used to start a fire. But if he becomes famous or notorious, the poor scribbling will be saved and preserved and quoted and misquoted, and terrible is the significance that will be allowed to the most insane device. I've got the notion to become famous just to prove the point. But even if I could, I should hesitate to forsake the joys of anonymity and solid animal comfort of obscurity. Must do an essay on this someday. When I read that, I just stopped in my tracks. What was I was doing the very thing he said somebody would do, right?
Yep.
I can tell you that I've tried my very best to be fair to John Voelker and try to present him as he truly was. And that was certainly my intent. I think the feedback that I've gotten from people close to him is that I've at least come pretty close to the mark on that. And I think it is a great story and one that is compelling for all sorts of reasons. What I'd like to do is not to abuse your time too much, but I don't know the people who are sort of supervising this. Should I take questions, or should I just take questions as people come up to the table, or how would you like me to do this?
Well, we do have some of the collection that's pulled out over here, and everybody can flip through it if they want. I think maybe a couple of quick questions, and then
I'm happy to.
leftovers can
Yes,
be
sir.
here.
As a professional in the field, what do you think of irresistible impulse as a defense strategy?
Okay, I'm going to be a law professor now for a second, okay?
Please, yes.
Back in the 1960s, when there was a much more favorable attitude toward rehabilitation and criminal defendants' rights and civil liberties, something called the Model Penal Code was promulgated. The Model Penal Code, which was supposed to be, it wasn't an actual criminal code, but was supposed to be a code to be used generally and adopted by states. And for the insanity defense, they said that the insanity defense could be established either by cognitive disability, you don't know right from wrong, or volitional disability. Even if you know right from wrong, you can't control yourself.
That's
Irresistible impulse.
irresistible, yeah.
Then you have the assassination attempt on President Reagan. And John Hinckley is acquitted because of insanity. And the country's outraged, Congress is outraged, maybe listening to their constituents. So now we have the federal insanity statute. And not only does that place the burden on the defendant to prove he's insane, rather than the government to prove that he's not insane, but it removes the irresistible impulse as a defense.
As a defense strategy.
And many states have adopted that, both as a reaction to the Reagan assassination attempt, and also I think a change in attitude about criminals and the insanity defense. I have to say, as someone who's both prosecuted and defended cases, that I think a lot of forensic experts do amazing and wonderful things, but I have real skepticism about psychiatric experts. And the example that I like to use is, you remember the Son of Sam killings, Dan Markowitz? Yeah, he was examined by 9 psychiatrists. 3 said he was insane, 3 said he wasn't insane, and 3 said they're not sure. Now, I don't know how you call that science, but there you have it.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering if, did Ernest Hemingway and Voelker ever meet? Because Hemingway came up here fishing.
I am not aware of that.
I don't think so.
And
Hemingway
Dad
came
knew
up
Sonny Hemingway,
in the 20s.
a sister of Ernest,
Oh,
who had a home on Walloon Lake near Petoskey,
yeah.
and they were friends, but as far as I know,
I don't think they did.
no, he did not meet Ernest Hemingway.
He
And
was
it-
close with, Ted Gardner.
Yes. Oh, yeah, they were
They were,
very close, yes.
And sort of a quick digression, if you read some of Voelker's published works, where it's clear that he's talking about himself and his father, there are stories of his father throwing him in the water and struggling to, and all of that. And because of that, Voelker, even though we took a trip out west, did not like to fish in fast-moving water. He preferred shallower water that wasn't fast-moving, that he could wade into.
Middle branch of the Escanaba.
Julie.
No.
I just wanted to
Up on
tell
the
you
Nunya.
that Joe Welsh and Dad got to be very good friends.
Yes.
And they were gonna write something, but then Joe's health started to fail, and so they never did it. They did travel together, and they were going to write something together, and I think that would have been wonderful, but.
Yeah.
It would have. I think Welsh died within 2 years
Yeah.
of the making of the movie.
So,
And Otto Preminger, the next film he filmed was Exodus,
yes.
and he invited the Voelkers and the Welshes out on location.
Yeah.
So they spent a lot of time there, and my understanding is that Voelker and Preminger exchanged cards and correspondence for years.
And good fellow.
My dad was the warden of the prison at the time of the movie being filmed, and we lived out there. And he showed Joe Welch around the prison. And I was 4, but I remember his wife Agnes came into the residence where my mother and I entertained her. Well, my dad was showing Joe around the prison, and I had my toy doctor kit giving her shots in the arm.
Wow.
And I have the letter she wrote to my mother, thanking her for her hospitality and her enchanting son.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's
What a
my only
story.
connection to the movie.
What a story. Yes, sir.
It's wonderful to hear how great way that you utilize the Voelker papers. I was one of the ones who collected them.
Oh,
back
really?
At the time we established this archives. And so, it's great to see what.
You know, in retrospect, I should have done this talk before I wrote the book and talked to all of you, and then it would be a better book. But yes, sir.
Second edition.
That's what I was
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
Come on, second edition.
Have you read the Joni Hansen book? Anatomy
Yes.
of An-
Yes,
That,
and that's quoted. I'm a professor, so I have extensive endnotes at the end of the book
as
contributing.
far as I know, your book, that one, and Anatomy of the Motion Picture are the only two books I know about the movie. Is that true, or?
That I'm aware of. Right, and this book doesn't just focus on the movie as part of sort of the continuum. And I don't know of any book that focuses as much on the legal or ethical or moral issues as this book does. Yes, sir.
What's an example of a legal or ethical issue that came up in the movie that might be taught in a law school?
Well, the most famous is the so-called lecture. And it's treated extensively in the novel, it's treated extensively in the film. Put yourself in Paul Beagler's position, if you will, okay? He's got a client who committed a public execution, and he's got to try to figure out some way to defend this guy. He knows that the only way he can defend this guy is an insanity defense. And it's probably got to be, he may not have been aware of irresistible impulse at the time, but it has to be some form of an insanity defense, right? But ethically, you can't tell your client, you know, you got to say that you were crazy, because you cannot suggest the defense to your client that way. So what he does, beautifully in the book, and I think captured amazingly well in the movie, is how he sort of leads him on this journey where the client comes up with insanity himself. And then now he's got his defense and he can go forward. So that's one example. But there's plenty of examples. Asking questions that are objectionable, referring to a polygraph exam when you really shouldn't. I mean, there are all sorts of things and that's why this is used in law schools around the country. Anatomy of a Murder is to teach it. Yes, sir.
Is the Parnell Stewart a character finding that precedent from the 1880? Is that factual?
Well, first of all, there was no Parnell McCarthy in real life.
Well, no.
Yeah, and there was no Maida either. And Voelker said that he created Parnell McCarthy so he would have someone to talk to. In fact, I will just let you know that I've just completed the manuscript of a novel that's based on a criminal trial that is court-martialed. It's sort of an ode to Anatomy of a Murder. And I had to create a character for my protagonist to talk to, so you can present two sides of the story, and it's not just the guy thinking in his head, but you actually have dialogue. Voelker said that he was amused because he would get cards for years and years, people asking, well, how's McCarthy doing? You know, is he doing all right? And there apparently was, I mean, you would all know this better than, there were a lot of Irish residents in the neighborhood, and one of the families was McCarthy. At least that's what I am told, so it may have been sort of an ode to them. I don't know if that is true or not.
It's McGinty.
McGinty?
I was Clancy.
The guy who played him in the movie, Arthur O'Connell, became good friends with Monsignor Scolgatti.
Yes.
And I guess he married late in life in New York City, and he invited Scolgatti to go up there and officiate at the wedding.
Right, and he paid for new carpeting in the church. He also suffered pneumonia in the filming. And a lot of the cast members, you know, most of them coming from sunny Hollywood, and you're up here in, early March, it's quite a change. So a lot of them suffered from different ailments during the filming.
I think maybe one more question,
Okay.
if anybody's got one.
Well, I hate to ask this question because it's something that I hope is not true. But seeing as how there's so many people around here that are familiar, I heard that Duke Ellington was not allowed to stay in the Hotel Northland. Thereby, he resided at the Mather Inn in Ishpeming. Now, that was a rumor. And
My
I would like to
understanding,
have it dispelled.
yeah, my understanding is that all of the principal cast and crew stayed at the Mather.
Yeah.
That the people who were sort of supporting them stayed at the Landmark. So, to to my, I've heard nothing that said that
Nothing like
Duke Ellington didn't stay at the Mather with everybody else.
And he had his
Years,
bandmates.
years and years ago, Marian Anderson came to sing, give a concert, and she was refused at the Mandarin, at the Mandarin.
Oh.
But that was
Uh-huh.
hundreds of years ago. I mean, you know,
But Duke Ellington's
I think Duke
bandmates were
Ellington
here.
stayed.
Yeah, and I remember reading in the journals, your father's admiration for Paul Robeson.
Yes,
So,
he marched for the miners,
yeah,
you know.
I mean, I have to say that, I don't detect, a prejudiced bone in his body. He judged people for the quality of their character and who they were, and,
Damon Keith.
yeah, Damon Keith was a very close
Yeah,
friend.
he and Damon went to lunch one day at some club down in Lansing, and because Damon was black, they kind of shuffled him behind the potted palm, and John figured out what was going on, and he said, "Let's get the hell out of here. I don't want any part of
Yeah,
this."
I mean, I think, where I've heard that story was the Detroit Athletic Club,
Could very well
where
be.
they went, and they basically put him behind a palm tree,
Yeah,
and he said, let's get out of
and
here.
he would have no part of it.
Yeah, and his last book, I'm trying to think of the name of it now.
People versus Kirk.
People versus Kirk, there's sort of a Damon Keith type
Moment.
character in there, yeah.
Okay, well,
Boy, when you talk about to a bunch of experts, I hope you found that at least mildly interesting. Thank you. And if it looks like we're gonna run out of books, I've got more books in the car, so I can send my loving wife out to schlep them in, you know.